Back to the big story this afternoon. NATO calling Russia's invasion of Ukraine a brutal act of war. And as you heard here live just a short time ago, the president is threatening even more consequences leveled against Vladimir Putin and Russia. But what exactly is the more that can be done that will ultimately make Mr. Putin stand down? Joining us this afternoon, Brad Bowman from the Foundation of Defenses of Democracies. Brad, it's always good to talk to you. Let me get your take, if I can, of what we heard from the president earlier this afternoon.
You know, this is a sobering moment for the United States, for Europe, and for the world. This is something our kids and grandkids are going to read about in the history books, and how we act in the coming days and weeks will determine whether this gets even worse. I think President Biden understands that gravity. I admire how he's trying to act in unison, for example, with our G7 partners. I'm of the view that the United States is at our best and most effective when we lead and when we build consensus among our allies and we act assertively. We've seen a big package of sanctions announced. It's certainly robust. I look forward to digging into the details. I suspect it could be a little stronger than it is, but if this is an incremental approach, I'd say this is a good step forward, but there's probably more that can be done. But right now, my thoughts are with the people of Ukraine,
yes,
whose country is under assault. People are dying as we speak because they want to defend their homeland against an authoritarian invader.
And I think your priorities are exactly in the right place on that, because we do sort of lose sight half a world away over here of what's going on. Easy for us to be quarterbacking what's going on in their country, and it is Ukraine that's very much in the balance this afternoon. In the news conference that followed, I thought it was interesting the number of people that sort of looked beyond. Is Ukraine the first stepping stone? And I'm hearkening back to the Vietnam era days. Is this the first domino? What's your view? Vladimir Putin has talked about a greater Russia. Are we seeing that now?
You know, I think the last time we talked, I spoke about the fogginess of my crystal ball. Unfortunately, it still remains foggy. But you know, to have educated guesses about the future, which I do with humility. You go to the saying, past is prologue, right? If you want to know how your children or a coworker or someone else is going to behave, or an authoritarian thug like Putin, you look at how they behaved in the past and what they've said. And when I look at Putin's track record and what he's written and what he's said, I think the responsible assumption is that we have to assume he will go as far as he thinks he can go,
yes,
until he hits something hard. He's hitting the hard will of the people of Ukraine to defend their country against an invasion. The Russians appear to be already taking casualties, in part, it seems, based on some of the weapons that have been provided. I think those casualties and costs for Russia will amount. But I do worry that Putin has already discounted both the pain associated with sanctions and even the casualties that he will incur. You know, it's clear he doesn't give a darn, really, about the Russian people. This is about, I think, his legacy, his vainglory, his reputation, maybe a late midlife crisis. Instead of buying a Harley, he's invading a country, and the consequences are going to be dire for many. And I think we're right to reinforce NATO, the eastern flank of NATO, Poland, Romania, the Baltics. I'm glad to see fighters being sent to Baltic countries. I'm glad to see H-64 Apaches going there. I put me in the camp of more is better at this point.
Yes.
You know, for so long, right, we heard, oh, we can't do this because we don't want to provoke Putin. Meanwhile, I suspect he was probably smiling and preparing his invasion. So, you know, can we kind of learn the lesson that, you know, sometimes, as I keep saying, there are authoritarian thugs in the world and they're going to do what they're going to do. And maybe we should be a little less worried about provoking a thug who's going to be a thug and a little bit more focused on helping threaten democracies. Germany worried about provoking Putin and destabilizing action of providing arms. I think the most destabilizing action is not helping a prey protect itself against a predator that's, of course, going to be a predator.
Well put. We're not 24 hours into this. And I don't think we have seen anything other than Russia just sort of dipping its toe, metaphorically, into a campaign here. But what, again, that cloudy crystal ball, I think it's reasonable to expect that there will be more. And some people have said, I'm sort of surprised there hasn't been up until this point. But maybe you do test the water a little bit before you dive right in if you're Russia.
I mean, look at what Putin, it's a great question. And just to elaborate the point I started to make a minute ago, if you look at what he's calling the regime, the government, the legitimate democratically elected government in Ukraine,
yes.
Nazis. He's calling them Nazis, right? Strong language, right? Mm-hmm. And you heard me say before, NATO is not Nazis and Ukraine's not the Nazis. Let's be clear on that. But that's the kind of terminology or rhetoric you use if you're preparing the Russian people to decapitate the government mm-hmm. of Ukraine, right? And what do you know? We're seeing attacks on Kyiv, the capital. I mean, Americans, pause a moment. Did you hear what I just said? Their capital has been attacked.
Yes.
And their top cities, some of their most populated cities, Mariupol and Lviv in the far west, these cities have been attacked. And we see forces rolling across international borders. So, and never mind the fact that they're trampling on the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. And this is where a lot of viewers roll their eyes like, what do I care about the Budapest? Well, remember, Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons on their territory mm-hmm. in return for a commitment from Russia that Russia would not invade or occupy them and would respect their territorial integrity. So what do the viewers out there think right now that Iran and North Korea are thinking about the value of nuclear weapons? They're probably thinking, boy, I want to get those, or I want more of those, or I'm never going to give mine up, because you give them up, you get invaded. What a horrible message to be sent around the world. And so we often talk about the global consequences of what we're seeing. Yes. That's just one more example.
I wonder, too, what China is thinking while our attention is focused on Eastern Europe almost exclusively now, and whatever their next move might be. It's all part of this same sort of interconnectedness and the dominoes again. I go back to, just because I'm a child of that generation.
No, absolutely. On the Russia-China angle, I see a little nuance. On one hand, China and Russia are more aligned than they've been since the 1950s, as the U.S. intelligence community assessed a couple of years ago. We've seen them doing military exercises, which I published on last year. Both maritime exercises and land exercises. They're exchanging best practices. They're integrating units. They're going to increasingly share technology and sell weapons between them. So there's a bit, they're not allies as we would think of them, but they're close and getting closer. But I also think if you look carefully at what the Chinese are saying, they're not happy with Putin right now because, some of their diplomats apparently got kind of abandoned there in Ukraine, didn't have a heads up, and so. And this creates an unhelpful, China is always about, respecting territorial integrity and national sovereignty. And basically, I can do whatever I want in my country, right? Yes. Well, how does that talking point fit with Ukraine being invaded? It doesn't, right? China's probably thinking, well, I hope the U.S. doesn't do a Putin in Taiwan. Hey, let's declare Putin independent, send our forces. I mean, that's the exact same playbook, and they wouldn't like that. So, what's good for the goose is not for the gander. So China's in a tough spot right now. They want to cozy up with Russia because they share a disdain for the United States and the rules-based order that the West has benefited from. But what's happening right now in Europe, in some ways, is quite awkward for Beijing. So there's a little nuance there, I think.
To call this a wide-ranging discussion, I think, doesn't do it enough justice, because we have, in fact, spanned the globe here. I always feel like, after talking to Brad Bowman, I have learned a lot more than when we started, and that was the case again today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Take a break. Again, an update for you on the forecast. That's going to become an issue as we get through the rest of this afternoon and perhaps into the night. We're back with that for you right after this.